this video, I'm going to be showing how I make some hump molds in my classroom. A hump mold is when you have a convex surface that you can drape clay over. So I'm going to start off by throwing some, and if you haven't seen any of my other videos on throwing, you might want to watch those because I really do go through the steps a little bit more specifically. The products that I use here, like the bat mate and the bats, I will have those listed on my link of, I have a Google Doc of Amazon links, and also in my Amazon influencer store. If you click on that, you can see the different things that I use and I recommend. I have some wedged up clay that I've already prepared. I'm not exactly sure of the weight. I'm just trying to go for some graduated sizes. I'm going to try to do 3 molds of graduated sizes. So I'm going to start off by centering this, and I'm going to throw it into a bowl form, but I'm not worried about leaving much of a bottom at all. I'm just going to leave a very thin bottom because I'm going to be pouring plaster in this. And again, it's going to be a waste mold. I'm not going to end up by actually using it and firing it because when you work with plaster, you have to be very careful about not getting clay in your plaster, because plaster is disastrous if it's in your clay and you fire it. So in the case of this mold that I'm making, I will not try to save it or recycle the clay if there's any chance that I might have plaster in there. So again, I'm dropping nearly all the way to the bat. I'm just keeping a little bit between the bat and the bottom of the bowl form. Now, throwing this form, I need to leave the walls extra thick and the base of the wall extra thick, because I do want to make sure that I'll have enough support to hold the weight of the plaster when I go to pour that in. All right, so again, it's extra thick, a little extra weight down there to help support the angle of the walls, because when I pour plaster in this after it's leather hard, it's going to need to support all the weight of that plaster. Now, this probably was obvious to you, but you know how I said I'm going to pour plaster in this and I'm making a hump mold? I could just fire it like this, and I could use it as a slump mold where I put clay into it. But because I want to do a hump mold, I'll be pouring plaster into it. Just a little FYI there. So for this last one, I'm going to have it much larger. But I wanted to show you a method, and I do show this in another video, of how I don't have to start with one massive piece of clay. I can start with one, center that, add another piece, center that, and add another piece. For any of you that have difficulty centering one massive large piece of clay, this is a nice little trick you might find helpful. Now with the first piece pretty centered, I'm going to rib off the moisture from the top of it. I did make it into a dome, so it's not flat topped, it is domed. Then I'm going to take the next piece of clay. I am going to round it. Oop, there's a little air bubble. I want to make sure that I've pushed that so it's not trapping air there. Okay. Now I'm ready to smack this down. Of course, again, you have to rib the moisture so you don't have water or a layer of slip between those two. And again, I will get the slip and moisture off my hands. That's why I always keep one of these microfiber towels at my wheel, so I can wipe that off. And then again, I'll make sure this is nice and rounded. No little trapped air. So although I didn't need to actually do this method, I just wanted to show you how it's maybe an easier way to center if you struggle with really large pieces. Once I have this clay centered, when I open this, you will notice I use a slightly different method. I'm using the heel of my hand to push downward and outward rather than my fingertips. I find that using a little bit more force and leverage with the heel of my hand helps me to be a little bit more stable and efficient with my motions. This long Mud Tools rib is in my Amazon storefront and in the Google Doc. These are great for big platters, love them. Whenever you have a really large item like this, you may find it advantageous to remove your splash pans because you need to make sure that you're not riding up. So I'm making sure that my hands and the wire handles are below the level of the bat because I don't want to ride up and cut through it. Now you might be wondering, why did I cut it off if I'm not saving this? Well, as it shrinks, I do want it to be able to freely move on the bat, and without cutting it, I'm afraid that it might not freely move and it could end up by cracking. And here we go. I now have 3 graduated bowls, which are going to be molds for hump molds. And again, if I wanted to fire these could be slump molds, but I'm going to let them get to the leather hard stage and then I'll show you the plaster in another video.